I'm going to show you something that will completely change how you see Atonement. There was this 5-minute tracking shot at Dunkirk and it's been called one of the greatest long takes in cinema history. It was filmed in one single take because they literally couldn't afford to do it any other way. They had 1 day, 1,000 extras, and 3 attempts to get it right. But here's what's more disturbing. Everything you watched in that final scene, every detail Robbie experienced, might be completely fictional, simply because Bryony wrote it. And once you understand what Joey Wright is actually showing us about truth, memory, and the stories we tell ourselves, Atonement becomes one of the most devastating films ever made. Atonement is often mistaken for a romantic period drama, a tragic love story torn apart by war. But pay attention to how it was filmed and edited, and you'll recognize it's something much darker. A film about how storytelling can be both salvation and ultimate betrayal. Today we're breaking down the visual language of Atonement, not just what happens, but how Joe Wright uses colour, perspective shifts, and that iconic green dress to pull us into Bryony's unreliable narration. We'll explore why that Dunkirk sequence matters and why the ending actually means, and how Wright makes us complicit in Bryony's fiction. Before we talk about anything else, we need to discuss that dress, the emerald green silk gown Cecilia wears during the library scene. Costume designer Duran spent months researching 1930s fashion, pulling from Coco Chanel and period photographs, but she wasn't trying to create historical accuracy. She was creating something that would burn into your memory. Wright told her it needed to represent the hottest day of the year and the awakening of passion between Cecilia and Robbie, and it worked. In a Sky Cinema poll, it was voted the greatest film costume ever. Replicas sold for over 30,000. And it even has its own Wikipedia page. Here's what makes it brilliant from a filmmaking perspective. Watch how cinematographer McGarvey lights that scene. The green dress becomes luminous against the muted browns and creams of the library. Cecilia becomes the vocal point of every frame, vibrant, alive, impossible to look away from. The colour green saturates the first part of the film. It's everywhere, the grass of the Tallis estate, the kitchen, even Robbie's bathroom. Green represents vitality, youth, and that perfect summer day where everything seems possible. Now pay attention because this is about to change. As the film progresses into wartime, the greens bleed into browns and greys. By Dunkirk, colour has been completely drained from the world, and when we see Bryony as an elderly woman, everything is just desaturated, faded, like memories have been written so many times they've been lost from their original form. The fountain scene is where Wright shows us his hand. This is a masterclass in how perspective really shapes reality. First, we see it from a distance. Cecilia strips down in her undergarments and plunges into the fountain to retrieve a broken piece of a vase. Robbie stands frozen, watching. From this angle, it's mysterious. What are we even seeing? What does it mean? Then we rewind. We see it from Cecilia's perspective. Keira Knightley plays this moment with such specific frustration. The vase was from her uncle. Robbie grabbed it for her hands and his clumsiness broke it. The plunge into the fountain isn't seduction, it's anger, and she's retrieving what he destroyed. Then we see it from Robbie's perspective. James McAvoy's performance here is all restraining longed. He's been in love with Cecilia for years, and when she emerges from the water, soaked and furious, something shifts in him. This is a moment he desires to become undeniable. And finally, most importantly, we see it from Bryony's perspective. She watches it from a window scene. At 13, she sees the scene through the lens of dramatic imagination. She thinks Robbie is proposing. She thinks the romantic scene is from one of her plays. This is where Wright's thesis statement, reality changes depending on who's telling the story. And Bryony, a child who sees the world through this narrative, will twist everything she witnesses into a story she expects to see. Now, at its core, Atonement isn't really about World War I or forbidden love. It's about terrifying power of narrative, how the stories we can tell destroy lives, how the perspective shape changes, and how reality changes with it, how a child's misunderstanding can cascade into tragedy. If you haven't watched Atonement in a while, go back, notice the colours, notice the perspectives, notice how the typewriter never stops, because once you see it, you can't unsee it.